Welcome back to the channel, guys. So in this video, we're actually going to be interviewing my friend Michael, who was a coworker with me at Amazon, and how he's using a new program called Bonus ADU to build a fourplex ADU in his backyard in San Diego. So in San Diego, they just created this new law called Bonus ADU that effectively allows you to build an unlimited amount of ADUs on a single family property lot. So if you own a single family home in San Diego with a big backyard, you could effectively build unlimited amounts of ADUs in your backyard. So there is an agent out there that I know of named Andrew Greer. He's a real estate agent out of San Diego. He's building 26 ADUs in his backyard in San Diego. So it's a crazy new law that a lot of real estate investors are taking full advantage of right now. So I thought it's really interesting. It's something that I personally was very interested in. I actually contacted Andrew to go talk about it. But ultimately, San Diego is a very expensive market to buy and to build in. But if you have the resources, it could be a very, very profitable deal, and you can actually find cash flow even in a high price market like San Diego. So if you guys are interested in this video, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the video.
All right, guys. So I got my friend Michael and his architect, designer, Francisco here with me. We're going to be talking about something that's I think is really, really interesting, something that I personally consider doing myself. So they're here to talk about the bonus ADU program, something that's really hot, something that's really popular going down in the San Diego area. If you guys are in California, like I am, then you might want to consider looking into this. And they're here to basically talk more about it. And I'm just going to be asking them more questions about it. Why don't we just start off by kind of doing some introductions? Michael, maybe you can just give us a little, tell me about yourself and kind of what you're doing with this bonus ADU program, and yeah, just kind of go from there.
Hi there, my name is Michael Tran. My regular W-2 is actually an engineer. Mike and I met at Amazon, and we both have like a passion for real estate. I met Francisco through my general contractor. Funny story is that on the corner where I had bought this new duplex, there was another duplex that was being developed into a fourplex. And I was really like impressed by, how many units they were fitting onto the spot. And then I asked my general contractor, it's crazy that they're building right here. And like, this is kind of what we want to do. He's like, I think I know that architect. And he introduced me to Francisco. So I'll hand it over to Francisco to do an introduction.
Okay, my name is Francisco, and I'm a designer. We do design for additions, new custom homes, and like Michael says right now. I mean the ADUs. I mean it's a boom right now because like right at this point, like 80% of our works is ADUs or garage conversions. And garage conversions meaning like a junior ADU because it's attached. ADU, they call it that because it's a detached structure. A lot of people, they say, oh, ADUs, but yeah, ADUs is a detached, or it could be attached, but most of the time the people, they're doing detached because you have the flexibility to do a bigger. And an ADU, I mean, junior ADU is limited to only to 499 square feet that have to be in the perimeter of the house or a garage conversion.
Right, but it's cheaper though. I think that's typically why people kind of start with that, right? Everyone has a garage. Yes. They can not everyone has this space. Yeah.
Like you mentioned, it's cheaper because you have 4 walls and a roof already. So the only thing that you do is just the interior and pretty much it. And you have to take off the garage door in order to make it look part of the house.
Gotcha. So yeah, we're gonna definitely dive into a lot of the permitting stuff that I'm really unfamiliar with, the costs associated with doing, designing and building, and well, permitting itself in California is like a hot topic because permitting has always been like harder in California than other states, I heard. I personally have not built anything, so we can definitely dive into that in just a little bit. Right now, I want to kind of dive a little bit more into the background real quick. So like Michael said, we were actually coworkers at Amazon before this, and this is how we know each other. But we actually almost bought a fourplex in Arizona before long, like 34 years ago. But what have you been up to since then? And like, what's kind of like your high level strategy? Where are you at right now in terms of your real estate portfolio? And then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah. So like Mike was saying, it's like I'd previously owned this fourplex in this HOA community. So one of the few multifamilies in the Mesa, Arizona. The way that I came about deciding on investing in Arizona in 2018 is that it was one of the largest growing areas in the nation, according to the US Census at the time. I've since 1031'd that into a duplex here in San Diego. Part of the reason is what we'll be talking about is this bonus ADU program, as well as there's a lot more control over density. In Arizona, similar to Texas, you can keep building in a sprawl. And also there's a component of like climate change that has played a factor into where I want to develop in the future.
Yeah, that's a really good strategy. So why don't we just dive right in? I think people who are trying to watch this video are most likely going to be asking about bonus ADU. So let's just dive right in. Like, what is bonus ADU, and more importantly, like, why should someone watching this care, and like, why is it so popular? So maybe Michael, you can go first on that, and then maybe Francisco can give us more of the details.
So I'll just give a high level. So the ADU bonus program was like first developed in San Diego as an incentive to increase density in the San Diego area. And Francisco can dive into the deeper topic of transit area and then the floor area ratio. Those are two big components of that. But essentially, the bonus ADU program allows for unlimited ADUs in those required, or if you meet those requirements.
Correct.
Yeah.
And like Michael says, the bonus ADU, I mean, in a single family zone, you can do, at this point, you can do only like the junior ADU and the ADU. But the city of San Diego, I mean, they just implement another rule that is going to be beneficiary for the homeowners. That they call it like sustainable development areas, that you can build more ADUs on a single lot, meaning the single lot, there's a residential one. Like I say, there used to be only the junior and the ADU, but now you can develop more as long as you don't exceed the floor area ratio or the lot coverage.
Gotcha.
But
It's crazy. Yeah.
Like I was telling Michael yesterday, that only happened in the city of San Diego, because some other areas like County, Chula Vista, or National City, they haven't developed this. So you have only on commercial or multifamily, you can do unlimited, but on residential, like RS1, it's only at the junior ADU and the ADU.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. So just to highlight this, again, what Michael said is like kind of like the most important piece of this is that effectively you can build unlimited ADUs as long as you meet certain requirements. So as an example, there is a real estate agent that I met or talked to. His name is Andrew Greer, I believe. And I don't know if you know him, but he's building 27 ADUs in his backyard for a single family home, which is absolutely insane. For the price that he's building these things and the amount that he can rent them for, he's going to cash flow crazy in California. And cash flow and California are never usually in the same sentence. And so finding cash flow in a high population, or like in a very, San Diego is a very expensive market. For you to be able to build these ADUs, and have high rent tenants, that could be a huge play, right? And this is a market that has appreciated a lot in the past 3 years as well. Well, not just the past 3 years, but yeah. So the way that I understood it is that this is kind of like a low income program as well, right? And so how does that work with, like, how do I determine how many units I can actually have on my property for my single family residence?
We need to check the zone first, and they have a table saying, okay, you have like 60%, 40% of the existing lot area. They have to multiply by that, and that will tell you how many square feet you can build on your property. And like you mentioned in the beginning, like this real estate guy, probably he got a big lot, and that's why he building like up to 26. Because right now I have a customer that he bought a property over in Encanto, and that property is 33,000 square feet, so he can build 20 ADUs.
That's absolutely insane. That is crazy.
Yes.
And yeah, and so this is why we're talking about bonus ADU today, because from what I know, a lot of real estate investors that I reached out to just on social media who are like from San Diego, whenever I ask them about bonus ADU, they're like, yeah, we're doing that. And I'm just like, everyone is doing this because it just makes it's like the best way to invest in San Diego right now. Because like if you go buy a $1 million house, rent it, you only get, $4,000 rent. You can go build like 2 or 3 ADUs, right? And just, rent them for like $2,000, $25, even up to $3,000 per ADU, and they're new. So from what I was reading, there's actually, if you go to like the San Diego website, you like look up bonus ADU program, it has like a pretty quick summary in like 1 or 2 pages of like the rules. And my understanding is that you also need to have a deed restricted ADU for every like unrestricted ADU. And when I say deed restricted, it's basically low income. So you need to rent to low income tenants for half of the ADUs. For every like low tenant ADU that low income ADU, you can have like an unrestricted ADU where you can charge like the market rents. And then there's like 3 tiers of income as well, right?
Yeah.
So how does that work?
Let's dive into those numbers. It's every year San Diego releases the median income. As of 2023, the median income of a San Diego family is $116,800. At a moderate family, a family of 3, a 2-bedroom, their max rent can be 26-28. And if a family of 2 for 1 bedroom, the max rent can be 23-36. So that's for moderate. That's at the 100% mark. If you're looking at 60% or the very low income, a family of 3 for a 2-bedroom is 1,862. And then a family of 2 for 1 bedroom is 1,655. And this is net. This is our gross rents minus utilities. If you combine your utilities into there, which we'll talk about a little bit later on where you can save on utilities and stuff like that. There's also an adjustable chart. Like you were saying, this opens the door for a lot of small scale developers to get a lot of scale. So you can have a lot of units on one property. And if you have a large solar array, you can lower your utility bill and then charge the rents. So you're both increasing density for your local population and providing housing for low income, as well as benefiting in terms of the financial incentives.
Did you have anything to add to that, Francisco?
Yeah, like you mentioned, I mean, right now, that's why the pretty much California, they give you these incentives so you can have, I mean, they give the flexibility to homeowners to have an independent structure so they can rent it out or they can rent it out to any family members because rent right now is really, really high. I mean, you pay more than you pay your mortgage.
I know, it's crazy. And I did note that if there's kind of an incentive to renting out to the lowest income tier, which is that your property is only deed restricted for a shorter period of time. So this unit only has to stay low. Like you only have to rent it to lower income tenants for like 10 years for very low income. But if you do like moderate income, sure, you're going to get more rent today, but it has to be low income tenant, or it has to stay as like a low income housing for like 15 or 20 years or something like that. So there's kind of like, you can choose what you want today with whether you'd rather like a very low income tenant, but that deed restriction falls off within 10 years versus if you take like a moderate income tenant, then that deed restriction is gonna stay a little bit longer. So and I think that stays along with even if you sell the property. So
there's also additional benefits too. If you're at the 60% mark, you're opening yourself up to better funding. So there's tax exempt bonds. So if you meet the criteria, 40% of all your units are deed restricted to that 60% mark, you can have access to the San Diego tax exempt bonds, as well as like these other programs. Francisco, you were going to say something?
Yeah. I'm just going to mention like you said about the deed restriction that you have to send the paperwork. I mean, because a lot of people they don't understand that you have to send the paperwork to housing commission, and you just tell them how many units they're gonna be, low income, and they're gonna be registered that to the assessor's office. So I mean, I just want to bring that up because a lot of people they think like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna put it so I can get my permit, and then tomorrow I'm gonna rent it out to the highest bid. No, that's not gonna happen because it's registered for like 10 years.
And there's a $150 monitoring fee. So part of the program is that there's some required docs that you'll have to send into the city every single year. And there's a $150 like processing fee. And they just validate that the people are making as much as they say they are. And those documents are part of that certification process.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's a little bit, I guess that's like a high level overview of that bonus ADU program. Again, just to summarize, you can build unlimited bonus ADUs as long as you are within what's called the TPA, which I think is like transit priority area. Basically areas, and this is something I wanted to mention as well, is parking, right? So transit parking area is that, I think that's TPA, right? There's actually a map if you go on the San Diego website, and they actually show you where the TPA zones are. And I was surprised to see that like most of San Diego is like in a TPA zone. So this is like pretty much everywhere, right? And as long as you are in a TPA zone and you have one deed restricted ADU for every unrestricted ADU, and Francisco, you mentioned like you have to calculate based on the square footage of your lot and all that. Pretty much like that's the gist of bonus ADU. You can pretty much build as many ADUs as you want as long as you're under those kind of criteria, right? And so, what about parking? This is a huge debate. When I made a video on TikTok about this, people were like, "Oh, like where are they going to park?" What's the answer to that?
You're exempt from parking. So on you park on the street. From parking. They don't require zero parking. You don't have to provide no parking.
Yeah, and when I talked to Michael about this last time, he was basically saying like the reason why it's within a TPA zone is because the idea is that these people who are going to be housed in your ADUs are going to basically take the bus. That's why it needs to be close to a bus. That's why TPA zone, right? But just so happens, I guess they have buses everywhere. So like the whole San Diego is like, in the TPA zone.
Not to mention the light rail. The San Diego light rail has the highest ridership in the nation.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So that's kind of the idea. I mean, so even with parking, like a lot of people ask, oh, like, doesn't that mean I have to provide 27 more parking spots if we're going to build 27 ADUs? No, you don't. Right. And that's also a really crazy thing too. All right. So let's move on now that you understand a little bit more about what the ADU bonus ADU program is. And this only applies to the city of San Diego, right? I don't think I've heard of it anywhere
The
else
bonus, yeah, the
besides.
bonus is only for the city of San Diego.
Yeah, and in California, they do have, a lot of other programs for building ADUs, and I think they're maybe even doing grants and for stuff like that. But from what I know, bonus ADU is like only in San Diego, from what I understand. So now
Yes.
I want to get into if I am like, let's say, a local investor, which I am, and I wanted to get into this program, and let's say I go buy a single family home, 20,000 square foot lot, maybe like 2,000 square foot home, but like a 20,000 square foot lot. What is the application process for me to start building these? Like, what would be my steps that I would need to take in order to actually build, let's say, like a fourplex in my back, or like a fourplex ADU in my backyard, just like Michael's doing here?
Yeah, for that one, like I said, we need to check the floor area ratio of your property, and we need to see how big is your lot. Depend, because each zone they have like different tabulations for the floor area ratio. So on this case, we have to check that, or I mean, anybody can check that. They just can go to the City of San Diego website, zoning, put your APN number, or you put your address, and they will tell you the maximum floor area ratio that you can do on your property. And just remember, I counted the house, count two, plus whatever any ADUs you can be allowed to build on the property.
Okay, so you can't
Yeah.
count all
A
of
lot of
that.
people,
Okay,
a lot of people, they think they can exclude the existing house, but no, you have to count that one plus the ADUs that
get a
you're
better
gonna build.
ratio.
Oh,
Yes,
that's a great
correct.
call out. And then, like, let's just say it's in the TPA zone. You've like done your floor area ratio. You've met with a great designer like Francisco. Now you've had your team and those checkboxes in the property itself. Now you're going to submit these project plans to the San Diego building department, and they're going to review it and make sure you did your due diligence. And then you're
So
also
hold on, let me
gonna
stop you right there. So for these project plans, right? So Francisco, that's what you do, right? You provide these plans for
Yes.
somebody like me, right? And so
Yes.
how does that process look like? What does it look like working with Francisco to like create these docs? Like, do you have a bunch of templates I can choose from, or like are we going from scratch? Like, how does that look like, and how long does it usually take?
So I can talk about my experience with Francisco and how it was so professional and seamless. So we met at the property. He had already come up with a rendering, like what this potential property could look at. He looked at online. I think it was by luck that he had been working on a house 2 doors down. So he's familiar with the area and the restrictions and all that stuff. And in this case, he said that you can actually add X amount of units to the place. This is how egress would look like. We started talking about like how many bedrooms we want per unit. Some things that I wanted to think about in terms of the development was like, we want a common wet wall, so it makes it easy for the development and maintenance. We jumped from like this macro level of like, how many units do you want? What is the makeup of it? What is the layout on the existing in configuration with the existing building? And then we went to the really nitty gritty details on like where we want to put the wet wall, how we want the shingles to look like, the stairs, which ways the stairs are going to go, stuff like that. But Francisco also did a ton of work up front behind the scenes, and he could probably speak more to that.
Yeah, like actually in our part, like Michael mentioned, when we met at the property, he gave me his ideas. So I put his ideas on option A, and I put my ideas on option B. So at the end of the day, he liked something from A, something from B. So we ended up with C, and we just put the package together. And until the minute he told me this is what we want, so we move forward to do electrical plans, sewer, water, cross sections, all the stuff that the city require. And then we get until a point, because his design is a 2-story building. So in this case, we have to send it to the structural engineer, because California required to have a structural engineer involved when it's a 2-story structure.
Gotcha.
And then after
Okay.
that, after we got
No, go ahead.
after all the package, so we just put it together, and we just sent it to the city last week. So we're just waiting to get the project number and invoice.
That's awesome. Okay, so not as complicated as I once thought. As long as you know the right people, they can kind of help you create this package and just submit it. So I was a little overwhelmed with like this like packet that you're supposed to like submit to the city, but it sounds like just by working with Francisco, you're able to basically like create that packet and send that in. So you worked with Francisco, a structural engineer. Is there anyone else that you need to kind of bring in besides Francisco, or Francisco, are you kind of like spearheading this like project so then you kind of bring in the people that you need, or how many other people are involved here?
Well, on this instance, we have already a structure in there. I mean, we don't need too many professionals, just a structural engineer and myself, because like Michael was saying in the beginning, you're exempt from a lot of layers that the city require when you build like a single family dwelling versus ADUs. Like on this case, ADUs, you don't require parking, you don't require fire sprinklers, you don't require solar reports, or you have exempt for a lot of stuff. So including landscape. I mean, we don't need a landscape designer on this project because the city of San Diego, or pretty much other cities, they make it so simple. So that way you don't have to spend too much money.
Okay. Let's talk about, like, let's say now you submit the application. How long does it take to get reviewed and approved?
Well, City of San Diego, since they're doing everything online, I mean, the first review will take 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
And then after that, we get all the comments from all the disciplines that are going to be involved. We do all the comments, we send it back to the city. And at that time, the city just reduce the time between 4 weeks max. Usually they take sometimes a little bit longer, but I mean, from start to finish to obtain permit on hands, right now we're talking like 4 months.
4 months. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not too bad. And then after that, they give you a building permit.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
And then once you have the building permit, what are you allowed to do at that point?
Like on this case, Michael have a contractor already, so he's gonna start, doing his diligence, like doing the trenching, rebar, making all the sewer lines. And then when he has all that stuff ready, he called for the first inspection.
Gotcha.
And then and then the inspectors, after they come the first time to the site, he will tell you, okay, so you call for this inspection. So he just walk you through for all the inspections that are going to be required.
Gotcha.
And that's part of like a really great general contractor, is that they have good planning skills on, I know by Friday I need to have this X done, so I'm going to call for inspection to be done, because sometimes the building department will be like backed up or they're not available. And that's the blocker. If you don't get inspection or don't pass on that day, then you pretty much have to stop work or wait for that review to happen again. And if you make any major changes to the plans, sometimes you have to resubmit, but maybe Francisco can speak to that, or if like he's experienced that. But I think for the most part, ADUs are, like he was saying with the exemptions, is really nice. It has streamlined the amount of density that we can add to a lot.
Yeah.
Yes, and you're right. And like you said, as long as you have a good contractor, he knows what he needs to do. And when the inspector comes over, he's just gonna look at him and sign it off and tell you, call me for the next inspection. So you're making a relationship with the inspector, because pretty much, like I say, he's gonna walk you through the whole process until they give you final.
Makes total sense. So I mean, I guess the name of the game is, as long as you find the right people, like, you don't really need to have all the answers. Basically, just go hire Francisco and you're good to go. Pretty much, he'll have everyone ready for you to go. So yeah, I might have to look into it again. I definitely had a lot of questions on permitting, but now that you say it, it makes it seem kind of more attainable, a little bit, more simple than what I initially thought. I want to go over like kind of some of the financials of why this is such a good, like, let's go through some of the numbers here, because rents in San Diego are high, but building costs in California are high. So is there any way you can give me kind of like a rough picture of like the just like the financial picture of like why someone would build an ADU, like how financially smart, or like how much money you're actually gonna be making if you build like one ADU and you rent it out? Because rents are high. I don't know exactly how high, but remember, half the units are low income and then the other half are market rate. So not every ADU is, or I mean, I guess you could say that, you're kind of averaging out the rents that you would collect from both of those units. And then even at that point, it still makes a lot of financial sense. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about your projected numbers and what you project for rent and stuff.
Yeah. So let me first cite some like stats. So in 2021, the Turner Center staff on ADU development quoted that the median cost to build an ADU in California is about $150,000, whereas compared to building a single family home is $540,800. So as you can see, there's a huge value of, like, you can't even buy a 2-bedroom home in San Diego for $150,000. So building in your backyard on an existing spot and then growing that density, you're already increasing your investment in ROI significantly. Some other places where I'm also looking to increase the income stream besides the rent is that in California, they have this law from 1921 that allows for landlords to act as a utility service. And you can charge all of the electricity that you generate from solar, you can charge back at the market rate. So if you have a large solar array, which you could pay and get a tax refund by 30% thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act. So let's just say your solar array is $100,000, you get that $30,000 tax credit. That is going to be really useful. And then you can have essentially your tenants pay off that loan that you've taken out for that solar array. That's one income stream. The other design thing that Francisco and I talked about is that a common laundry room amongst all four. So this saves a lot of space within the units. And then also you can kind of monetize that part. And there's also, since we're doing energy efficiency, there's apartments, and obviously this does not apply to my specific use case, but San Diego has this Measure C that apartments of at least like 4 stories can get this energy efficiency deduction. And that's also thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act. And there's other things I'm exploring to like save. So we also are not running a gas line. One of the great things is that all the appliances in these units are all going to be electricity. So we saved on the trenching for the gas. There's no necessary gas meter. It's all going to be like separate water meters. And another callback earlier is that we don't need fire sprinklers. So we didn't need to get a larger water diameter. That's also something that you might have to consider if you have a ton of units in your backyard, is like the size of the water inlet into your property might be something that you have to factor in, because that's working with the city. That's also going to be another thing that you have to consider.
And working with Francisco, we'll get these things answered, right? Like I don't have to know these things just yet, right? Yeah, those are I guess those are a lot of things I didn't even think were something that needed to be considered. So I guess that's what you guys talk about between you and Francisco, sounds like.
You could also monetize, like the Inflation Reduction Act also allowed you to get EV chargers for commercial places. So you can actually install EV chargers, and that actually is an incentive for your units over other units maybe on the same street. Because as more and more people are electrifying their cars, they're also going to want a place to park. So you could have like a rotating shared parking spot that has this.
Ooh.
And that's also where you're making money and also getting the tax benefits.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting take. You said $150,000 average to build an ADU. But has that been true for you? Because you're building two bedroom, 1 bath ADUs. So you have a fourplex of 2 bed, 1 bath. So is that kind of been true for you? This 150,000? That seems awfully like low.
Yeah, we'll see how it turns out to be. As you know, building costs are constantly fluctuating, but the way that we panned it out is more expensive. We're doing a few other things that I think will increase the value of the property that are not just so minimal. I think that 150 was probably based off of a single story ADU that has like pre-approved plans and probably very minimal finishes in terms of windows and that sort of thing. That's probably not going to be the case in this scenario, but I think still the numbers still pan out in terms of how our building costs, because you're building one fourplex that has the same 4 walls and then the staircase on the outside. And so you're maximizing the amount of interior space.
And one other thing that Michael says on the beginning, we try to utilize, like back-to-back bathrooms, back-to-back kitchens, and that way we can reduce the price and the cost when we build the units, because we have all the plumbing in one wall, all the water in one wall, and when it's back to back, you reduce the cost too as well.
Makes sense. Yeah, there's a lot of good ways to kind of save on building costs there. So then, what do you kind of project that the rent would be for a 2 bedroom, 1 bath? We're talking about market rate, not for your lower income housing units.
Yeah, I think it's even crazy at the moderate income. It's still 26, 28 after utilities paid. I mean, that's still very high for a family of 3. So if that's, a little under like market rents, I think that's great. I know that it's also the area that we're developing is in Claremont, and we're very close to UCSD, and that has a big presence in the area as they continue to expand their campus. They're the 3rd largest UC campus in the nation or in the state. There's always going to be that demand, as well as the hospitals that are nearby. Like 4 of my neighbors are nurses. So I foresee rents continuing to be driven up, even though we're adding density, but it's not at the speed that's necessary. Mm-hmm.
And, another thing I'll add is that San Diego is still giving out short-term rental permits. So my strategy was I was going to go buy a home in San Diego, a single family home, and turn that into an Airbnb, kind of allow me to kind of have an increased amount of income for that one property as I'm building these ADUs in the backyard, right? And then potentially, I guess, because those half your ADUs are not deed restricted, they could be ADUs as well. And ADUs in San Diego, I'm sure, do pretty well because it's kind of a year-round market. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about like how you personally are financing ADU build?
Yeah, for me personally, using a combination of construction loans and personal loans, and also cash on hand for the actual construction. I'm also investigating what we've mentioned earlier, the tax exempt bonds, the low income housing tax credit programs, the home investment partnership programs, which allow these low interest loans for profit developers for affordable housing. Obviously, the city, the state all want us to increase the amount of affordable housing. And so obviously with the high interest rate environment, these cities are incentivizing developers.
Yeah, there sounds like there's a lot of programs incentivizing this. Well, I think we're not going to dive into how the construction loan works. If you guys want to learn more about that, you guys can definitely go check that out, how construction loans work. But I think if we dive into that, it's going to be too long. We talked about solar, that 30% tax credit that you can get. I think that's continuing all the way until 2032, I believe. So you're not too late to do that yet.
Not to mention your experience with accelerated depreciation. I think that's also a factor after building the place.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So let's say you build this thing and it costs you $800,000 to build for four. Okay. What does that do for you in terms of taxes? Once this thing is built, let's say you finish in 2023 this year, are you going to be doing a cost segregation on this ADU? And because you also had bought the single family home first, so would it be possible for me, for example, to buy a home in San Diego right now in 2023? Let's say it's a $1 million property, and I claim bonus depreciation on this property, and then get the tax benefit from that, and then build this ADU, and then let's say your $800,000 ADU is done building in 2024. Can I then take bonus depreciation again for just those properties and get a tax benefit there as well?
That's a great question for your accountant. I unfortunately can't speak to the specifics, but I think if you were to apply the same principles of bonus depreciation on the rentals, that the new development will also be applicable. But again, not a CPA.
And that's huge, right? And so my initial strategy was actually to first buy this $1 million property and take bonus depreciation against it. And if you guys watch my channel and you guys don't know what bonus depreciation is, you guys need to go watch that video on bonus depreciation. It's the reason why my wife and I saved $80,000 in federal income tax last year. So we basically were hoping to buy a $1 million property in San Diego, take bonus depreciation on that property, and using our real estate professional status, we were able to use some of the losses within our rental property generated by bonus depreciation to offset our W-2 income. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch, it's the most popular video on my channel. But using those tax savings from this $1 million property, I was going to use those tax savings of maybe $50,000 or so to go build these ADUs. So I could finance these ADUs using a construction loan, and my down payment would have been the tax savings from buying the single family home. So that's like a crazy strategy and something that I was considering doing, but then I didn't have enough cash to buy a $1 million property in San Diego. And the main problem with this strategy so far, for me at least, is that I can't find a $1 million property in San Diego that's going to not be negatively cash flowing like $2,000 per month. So then you actually bought a duplex. I thought this was for single family zones only though. Is the duplex that you're sitting on in a RS1 as well?
Yeah, so single family, it's a kind of a misnomer. So anything under 5 units is considered single family, and anything above 4 is considered multifamily, even though you have duplex, 3. So that's why you can technically qualify for an FHA loan for a fourplex, even because it's single family. So yeah, it's a weird misnomer.
Okay. Yeah. So anyways, that was kind of my take on bonus EDU, like kind of my strategy going into it. I guess the last thing I want to kind of close with is I want to kind of gauge how popular this is. So Francisco, you have been doing, bonus. I don't know how recent bonus ADU is. I just heard about it from Michael this year. But have you seen a sizable increase in the number of people wanting to work with you to do these bonus ADUs?
Yes, because like I say, City of San Diego, they give us this program. By right, they give you one ADU and you get the bonus, and then you get the low income. And like I say, as long as you don't exceed the floor area ratio, you can build as many as you can.
Yeah,
and
that is amazing.
The flexibility, like for a lot of people, instead of buying another property and build a house, I mean, you can build as many units they can fit on your property with the low income, and not enough cash flow to buy another property.
Yeah, there's an interesting stat. So in 2018, there were only 7 deed restricted ADUs built that year. In 2021, there were 295. So obviously these incentives are working in terms of higher buildings and or more density buildings as well as deed restricted ADUs. So they're not just
Yeah.
helping developers, they're helping the whole community.
Yeah, and that still seems like relatively low for the amount of, housing. We're in a housing crisis, not enough supply. 295 units still doesn't seem like that. Like it'd really make a dent in that.
And like you mentioned in the beginning, like, I mean, if you don't have the money to build a detached ADU, I mean, you can convert your garage and there's another income right there, because it just depends how big is your garage. You can put like a 1 bedroom, kitchen, dining, living area for family, or like Michael was saying in the beginning, for a couple. And I mean, you can rent it out for how much? Like 2,400.
2,400 for a garage?
Yeah, I mean, yes.
So okay, so then the main house, let's say, is a 3-bed, 2-bath. How much does that rent for? Like 30, what, 4,000?
Depends on what city, but yeah.
4,000 plus
seen numbers.
2,300? Wait, that actually might work out then, because if you buy $1 million property, even with 7% interest rates, your monthly payment is what, like 6,200, 6,500-ish? So you rent for 4,000 plus, 2,400, that's 6,400. That's the majority of your mortgage paid off, right? So,
Yes.
wow. That garage conversion, I didn't know rents were that high for a garage conversion. And wow, that's insane. And I think you mentioned something about the low income housing program. There's like a wait list. Is that right? Or is that something, did I mistake that? So it's relatively easy to find these tenants.
Yeah, so you actually could just vet the tenants yourself, and then through the certification program with the city, you're like making sure that they showed their paycheck, their W-2s, that proof of ID and stuff like that. That they say that they're who they are and what they make, and then you're qualifying. You don't actually have to pull from the list that's available where they have to have a housing voucher or anything like that.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much all the questions I wanted to ask. I know we're reaching kind of like the hour mark here, so I want to keep this video a little bit shorter. I guess maybe before we end, maybe where can people find you if they watch this video, they want to reach out? Maybe Francisco, you can give us a little wherever we can contact you.
I can give you my email, my phone number, so they can call me or email.
Okay, I can leave it in the description below. So if you guys are interested in working with Francisco, then you guys can just go down to the description and there'll be contact information from there. And then Michael, where are you at?
You can find me on Twitter. My handle is Mike, MIKE _ Tran, TRANN.
Cool. Well, yeah, thank you guys so much for joining. This bonus ADU stuff is honestly game changer. Finding cash flow in any California market is absolutely insane. But I feel like so are you going to convert your garage into an ADU then also? Because like that'd be even more insane. I feel like if anything, the garage conversion is more, it's a better play because it's cheaper and you can collect, slightly less rent than a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, but still, like in terms of cost, how much you can rent it for, is that actually seems more economical.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes,
Wow.
Yes, it is. Like,
okay.
like I said on the beginning, I mean, you got already 4 walls and a roof, just only the interior model that you're gonna do.
Gotcha. That's amazing. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Francisco. Thanks so much, Michael, for joining. And hopefully we'll catch you guys on the channel again, maybe after you guys are done building, and we'll do like a tour or something like that of your ADUs.
Yeah.
Cool. All right,
Thanks,
guys.
Mike.
Thank you guys so much for joining.
Bye.
Have a good day. Bye.
Thanks, guys.